Well, good boy, Dingo. Such good dogs.
Just hanging out with us.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Right, you tell it. Him and I, have been on a journey, an escapade, expedition, you might say, around the world, and along the way we have brought 2 other individuals with us, and they are both dogs with 4 legs and fur and the need for rabies vaccinations. We have now traveled to 37 states and 8 countries with our dogs.
So far.
And
for those of you that don't know, this all started because we were living in Hawaii. We got a dog, his name was Dingo. We shortly thereafter got another dog named Penny, and we decided we wanted to travel the world. And so here we are, traveling the world.
I think that kind of brushes over an important part of the story, actually.
Yeah, there's a point where Penny got thrown out of a car window.
Rewind a little further.
All of our stuff got stolen out of our car.
A little further.
We
We
were 8 years old.
We wanted to travel the world before we got the dogs. We're like, we're going to do this.
But we couldn't figure out how to do that affordably and continuously until we found out about sailing, which is a pretty new concept. So we realized that we could do that.
It's not a new concept at all.
That was the joke.
Oh. We learned about sailing. And so we're like, this is the plan. But then all of our stuff started getting stolen. And so we had to get a dog. And so our plans shifted. Now it wasn't just sailing the world. It was sailing the world with a dog. And then we were driving, and Penny got tossed out the window in front of us. And now the plan was to sail the world with 2 dogs.
You ready to start over?
Do you not like my description?
No.
This is a video about a couple of dogs. They're not going to be in the video because they don't speak English or Spanish. We'll get to that later.
These dogs have traveled a lot.
They're well-traveled dogs.
They're well-traveled dogs.
We're going to tell their story.
What's their life like? Do they hate their life? Do they love their life? Are they malnourished? Are they
malnourished?
Whatever, right? Over the years, we've had tons of people asking questions, and we have figured out a lot of things. And so this is going to be kind of an inside look of mostly what our life has been like with these 2 full-size adult dogs on board our small home sailing the world. And we'll see if we can get their input, but they probably won't help out much.
Well, yeah. They're a little confused because recently we've been trying to teach them a new language to help them become bilingual, but it isn't going well. However, we have been making significant progress with our Spanish learning, and that is thanks to the sponsor of this video, Lingoda.
Lingoda is an online school that teaches you how to speak a language, a different language than you already speak. And they offer one-on-one classes or group classes, and we've actually both been doing it. And so far I've had a class with one other person and a one-on-one class just because that's just what happened.
It's been amazing because you actually get to speak. And that's
the hard part.
When I did my placement test, placed much higher than I should have been because I can read and write Spanish, but I cannot understand it nearly to that level. So this has been a complete game changer for learning the language.
It's a live class. You're on a Zoom call with your teacher, and they're sharing their screen, and you're seeing their expressions, and it's pretty cool.
It's very, very cool. And it comes with lesson materials that you can review ahead of time, and then you also get flashcards that you can practice on your own time to correlate with the lessons that you're taking. So it's a full inclusive system for learning a new language.
Lingoda has a couple of different offers. One of them right now that we are doing is called the Sprint Challenge, and it's a 2-month challenge where you basically go to 15 classes each month. If you complete it, they will give you 50% cash back. And so then your classes end up only being $8 a class, which is really good.
And personally, I think that the sprint option is just psychologically brilliant because it leans into your competitive nature because you're like, I'm going to win this challenge. And financially, it leans into that motivation as well. There are classes being taught 24/7 from Lingoda, so you can go on and schedule. It's super easy. You can see all the classes ahead of time, what class they are, who's teaching it.
Oh, and I want to say because that works because I've now had teachers in multiple different countries. Because, depending on whatever time zone, it might not make sense for that teacher to be on at 2 in the morning. So they have different time zones, different areas. So yeah, I've had teachers in Peru, I've had teachers in like the East Coast of the US, all over the place. So if you're ready for a challenge that will fast track your language skills, join us. Go join the Lingoda Sprint and use the code SAILING, and they'll give you a $25 exclusive discount. So thank you, Lingoda, for sponsoring this episode, for helping us be better with our Spanish, and hopefully we'll see you guys in a class.
But if you do end up in a class with us, please don't make fun of how much we're still needing to learn. Lingoda is helping us a lot. First things first, what is it like to travel with dogs internationally by sailboat?
It's great.
It's fan-freaking-tastic.
It's great. Yeah.
We love it. Having the dogs with us is awesome. Is that our cockpit cushion?
I think that was a cockpit cushion. Pause.
From 30,000 feet, you look at this lifestyle, and it is just lovely. I mean, wind in the hair, paws on the beach, fish for dinner. Okay. 24/7 with your humans. From a dog's perspective, it is pretty great.
I heard a joke recently because it used to be the saying used to be from the 10,000 foot view, but now that planes fly higher, now it's a 30,000 foot view.
It used to be 10,000?
Yeah, that used to be the saying was a 10,000 foot view.
Do any of you guys remember that? Quality of life. Our biggest concern going into sailing really was the dogs. I mean, I was terrified of ocean crossings, but aside from that, we adopted these dogs and we decided that we were going to be their forever family. That was very important because they'd both been abandoned by their previous families, and we weren't going to do that to them. By pursuing our dream, we wanted to make sure that it was decent for them and that they weren't just getting dragged along.
I think they love it.
I think they're really happy. So we've had these dogs in a condo, in a van, and in the suburbs, and in various cheap hotel rooms, in a panel van.
Yeah.
And in the boat. We've lived a variety of different ways, and I definitely think the favorite place for our dogs was Brett's brother's farm. The second favorite place for our dogs is the sailboat.
Yeah.
Like, you can't beat farm life for a dog. We're not even going to go, like, that wins.
That's not a comparison.
Down. The biggest misconception that I think we also had before we were actually doing this was the percentage of time sailing versus the percentage of time not sailing on anchor or at a marina. Now, our envision of sailing around the world, like we're running the winches, we're raising the sail, the salt's splashing, the boat's heeled over, like it's this
sailing through the night,
this epic adventure,
storms and lightning.
Right, which does happen. But what happens a lot more is that we wake up in the morning, our anchor is still set in the same place it was yesterday. We look out at the beach or the coastal town that we're at. We have our coffee, and then we go to bed. Well, we do some other stuff. And then when we go to bed, we wake up the next morning, and we're still in that same place. So I actually went ahead and I did the math. Last year, 2023, was a very big sailing year for us. We crossed multiple international borders, and we did an Atlantic crossing. Now, it was the most sailing we've ever done in a year, last year. And in total, I think it was 38 days of sailing. That's meaning like sailing, passage sailing. We leave and we sail a full 24 hours. That is only 90% of the days in a year. No.
10% of the days in the year.
That is only 10% of the days in the year. The other 90% of the days were not on passages. They were on anchor or doing what's called day sails.
Yeah, but those could be we could have a bunch of half days, right? We aren't going to count towards that because those are still days that the dogs were able to get off the boat, go to land, stretch their legs, go to the bathroom, things like that.
And then we sail for a few hours, have a great time.
Right.
Set the anchor, and then go to the beach again.
Or maybe it's an overnight, right? We leave at 6 p.m., we get there at 8 a.m., right? We sailed for, 14 hours, but then the next day they get to go to the beach again.
Right.
And we did that 90% of the time, or...
Literally 90% of the time. Like, that's
literally 90%.
That is a mathematical calculation that we did. The year prior, it was like 96% of the time. So... that's crazy. And that's not at all what we expected thinking about sailing. Like, we didn't really realize how much of it was that. Because we do have to travel to get from place to place. But then once we're in that place, it's like little travels.
Yeah. Yeah, you do the big jump and then just a bunch of little jumps. So what that means is that our dogs spend a lot more of the time going to land and getting off the boat and all that than they do being stuck
on the boat.
on the boat.
Right. And the biggest giveaway for us about like their exercise level and their activity level was actually that we had to switch our dogs to a high-calorie sport dog food when we could get it, otherwise puppy chow, because we needed to keep up with their extra calorie needs. They were running and playing at the beach so much.
Yeah, running, swimming, chasing crabs and fishes and
just having a good old time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
they were getting too skinny. Yeah.
So we had to give them more food.
And that's the 90%. The 90% is that we're going to the beach and all that, right? The 10% is that we are doing a crossing or a 2-day sail or a 3-day sail or whatever, or the 18-day sail across the Atlantic where there's no land for 1,000 miles plus, and there's no option. They cannot get off the boat. So they are on the boat full time, going to the bathroom on the boat, sleeping on the boat, playing on the boat, exercising on the boat. And so to compensate for that high drive of energy and playing that they maybe had, is that we have so many toys.
And it's impressive how much energy mentally exerting toys have on dogs. Doing like puzzle toys and well, mostly that, puzzle toys and like hiding treats around the boat so they have to go and find the treats and stuff. That gets out a lot of their energy and provides a lot of just activity for them.
Yeah, the chew toys. I think that's a big one
toys,
too. Yeah.
Peanut butter toys. So most of the time while sailing, they're still pretty contented doing that. And they genuinely like sailing. They like having the wind in their hair. It's like sticking their head out a car window except for their whole body. Fabulous.
They have harnesses that they wear only for sailing. If we pull out those harnesses, they know that means sailing, and they get super excited.
Definitely.
Because they know that this means we're going sailing, and they love sailing.
Penny will spend days in a row just sitting on the back fishing, looking for the fish. She'll let us know if there's a fish on the line. Dingo loves to sunbathe.
The key thing that dogs want is they want to be with their humans. And this life, they are with us almost all the time. Because we do this for a living, and we sail, we make videos, and so we're editing videos, we're taking them to the beach, we're going swimming. They also love home. This is their home. And so when we're at the beach, even if we're having a ton of fun, when we say, hey, it's time to go home, they get super excited to go home, and as soon as we get back to the boat, they launch off the dinghy and they do zoomies in the house because they're excited to be back. The house, the boat.
There's been many times when we've been at the beach and the dogs have both gone and gotten back in the dinghy.
To go home.
And then just sit and look at us. Guys, I want to go home.
So this is home. They love it. Let's talk about the legalities and border crossings and countries and that aspect of it.
International border smuggling of dogs.
No smuggling.
No
we have traveled now with these dogs to 8 countries. There's a lot of paperwork that goes into getting them in and out of countries, and we have gone to a lot of vets to be able to do it, and most countries that we have been to could have cared less. That's the truth of it.
Only one country even looked at the paperwork we did. The paperwork was one of the most intimidating things about this lifestyle. It's still pretty intimidating, but the dog paperwork especially seemed like a lot.
It is a lot.
There's so many checkboxes and it just seems so intimidating, but it's been incredibly simple. We pretty much every time we've just informed the veterinarian ahead of time that we
in the country that we're in then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That we need to have the paperwork filled out, and we send them the country we're going to, all the documents and stuff, and then we gotta just show up and they check all the boxes, and it's been very straightforward and not particularly expensive. It is expensive in the sense that we're having to go to the vet more often because we're going to the vet multiple times per year rather than just like an annual checkup.
So you are going to the vet more often, so you're having to pay those vet fees.
And the countries don't charge for the dogs, except for the Bahamas so far. That's the only country we've had to actually pay. Everywhere else, the only expense was the vet paperwork to make sure they had their health certificates up to date.
Which isn't a bad deal, getting the dogs into the vet. They look them over, make sure they're healthy, make sure they're on weight, and that their limbs aren't falling off. Basic stuff. And so that's the legality and I'm going to give Jade 100% of the credit because she has done all the research to make sure that we've gotten to the country paperwork all correctly. I'll get us to the country, but she'll make sure the paperwork is done correctly.
I'm still a little embarrassed about the Guatemala mess up, but all the other countries have been seamless. I've gotten it all right.
Yeah, and that wasn't a dog thing. That was a boat thing, so I'll take some of the credit on that one or all of it.
Can I tell them a secret?
No, you can't tell them a secret. We aren't telling you that you don't need to do the paperwork because you should follow the rules, but
we've always done all the paperwork and we will always do all the paperwork because we don't want anything to go wrong and we're very goody two-shoes about the rules.
lay down.
The pillow's in his way.
Penny laid on him.
Oh, did you lay on your brother?
Okay.
We're talking about you on the internet. Do you feel exploited? There are a few other legal considerations that we always have to pay attention to, like local laws and, well, mostly that. For example, Morocco had no leash laws at all.
Like no laws for dogs at all.
Yeah, so things like that, or there's certain countries where there's certain breed restrictions, or if your dog is over a certain size, then they're required to wear a muzzle all the time, or if their dog is a certain breed, they're not allowed in the country at all. So we always, when we're going to these new countries, we're finding and reading all of the local laws. And then the next legality thing that we have to keep in mind is location restrictions.
Yeah,
because
there are certain places that the dogs aren't allowed. Like there are certain beaches, obviously, that are no dog beaches. There's also nature reserves, national parks, things like that. That the dogs they aren't allowed there for whether it's the flora, the fauna, the birds, the sanctuaries, whatever it is. They don't want dogs there, and so we have to be aware that hey, the dogs aren't allowed on that island, or they're not allowed on that beach, or whatever it is. So that's a little extra step, extra research of things that we need to make sure.
More or less, but that being said, even if you don't have dogs,
you should be aware of that.
Yeah, you shouldn't go tromping on nesting grounds as a human either. So I wouldn't say that adds that much extra, but it is something we're definitely diligent about because obviously we don't want our dogs to be affecting the local environments.
And part of the reason why the countries have the laws between, if you're coming from one country to another is because of rabies and just diseases and vaccines. That's why they have to get checked out. That's why, if you're going from I didn't realize this before we started traveling, there are high rabies zones, low rabies zones, and no rabies zones. And so if you're coming from like a high rabies to a no rabies, the odds are your dog can't come without a lot of testing to make sure that they are rabies free and that they have their vaccine and that vaccine works.
Especially important if you end up with, say a bat on board.
Right. That would be crazy.
In company of a scorpion. But, I digress.
I don't think they have rabies.
Scorpions?
Yeah.
No, but you might get rabies because you're distracted.
You might. Sorry, the camera battery just died. On a similar vein, though, of rabies vaccines, let's talk about the health and safety of Dingo and Penny on board.
I think it's kind of a double-edged sword, or what's another phrase like that?
Catch-22.
Catch-22. Our dogs, like we said, are going to the vet a lot. So they're constantly getting physical checkups. In that process, I feel like their health is definitely more cared for, more monitored than it would be if we weren't living this lifestyle.
The other edge of that sword, knife, axe, is that we are intentionally away from vets. We're out cruising.
I mean, that's not the objective.
That's why we're doing this, is to get away from the vets.
Remote places, remote islands don't have very good access to veterinarian services. Or any, sometimes. And so that is the other consideration, of course. We
have a pretty extensive resource of our own veterinary supplies and everything, whether that's in our ditch kit or in our own first aid kit. So we have obviously our own first aid kit, our own ditch kit supplies, but then we have dog-specific medicines and Band-Aids and wraps for them if something were to happen. And we intentionally got a slightly bigger life raft than we would have needed if it was just us, because we
Right.
knew, okay, if we're ditching this boat, they're coming with us.
Obviously.
The life raft that we have actually has a tougher floor, so theoretically they shouldn't puncture it.
Oh,
but
definitely. It'll
yeah,
be fine.
yeah, they'll be fine.
And it was easy to get the vet kits. All we had to do was tell the vet what we were doing, and the vet was like, "You're doing what now?" "We're sailing the world on a boat." And they're like, "Okay." And then we got a kit of dog medicine to take with us. With today's technology and Starlink, we can always access veterinarian advice.
It's a big step from getting stung by a scorpion and trying to...
Hey, I need you to look something up. Huge black scorpion, Guatemala.
send like a 3-pixel picture and say, "Is this scorpion deadly?" That was me that got stung, not the dogs.
Yeah, the dogs have never had anything go wrong since being on the boat. Another health thing is seasickness, which they also never do get seasick, which is fantastic and just pure luck.
That was
we
luck.
could have had 2 dogs that get seasick. It's kind of like people. Some humans get seasick, some don't. Some dogs get seasick, some don't.
And they don't at
They
all.
don't.
Neither of them have ever thrown up from seasickness,
Never.
or even if it gets really rocky and everything, they'll kind of hunker down, which I think is just like a safety thing. Which we do the same thing. You start
Yeah.
holding on to stuff and getting lower, but that's
but they don't
pretty
have
much
much
it.
queasiness.
No,
Yeah.
they've never. They'll still eat and drink when it's stormy out. The other side of safety is while we're sailing.
Yeah.
We have harnesses that they only wear when they're sailing, but then they also have their own tethers that we tether them to the boat. We also have jack lines that if they have to go up on deck, we tether them onto the boat. And so we keep them safe because they're family.
But again, that's only maybe 10% of our time. The rest of the time is not sailing. While we're on anchor or while we're visiting coastal towns or at the beach, we have pretty strict rules for safety.
Yeah, very set expectations
very
of what's
set
allowed, what's
expectations.
not.
It makes things a lot easier for them. They're never ever allowed to jump off the boat without permission. Even if there's nothing there, even if it would have been totally safe.
This boat or the dinghy.
Yeah, none of the boats. If they jump off the boat without permission, they get in big trouble. Which is me being like, no.
They aren't allowed to jump off the front of the dinghy when we're going to the beach because they might not realize that there's coral and it's too shallow and they could get hurt.
And this is a really interesting part of the training of the dogs because you can't train them for negative situations. Instead of training the dogs to not jump off the dinghy after sea creatures, when they see dolphins or whatever, we train them to jump off the dinghy, but only on command. Go ahead.
Go to the beach.
So,
So the default is don't jump off the dinghy.
right, so then they learn, I am allowed to jump off the dinghy, but only if they say so. And so then that is how we trained them not to jump off the dinghy. So it's kind of like a roundabout way to get there, but it's been very effective.
Yeah.
And then we've just had to stay super consistent with that. If the routine is that they're always jumping off to go to the same beach, and then they jump off one day without permission, then we have to stop the dinghy, make them get back in the dinghy, and then tell them they can jump off.
Yep.
Because that's the rule, and the consistency really does keep them safe. Then when we are on the remote islands, they do get some off-leash leniency. They get to play a little bit more because there's nothing around, and that's really awesome for them. But dogs are still dogs, and even though they have 100% good recall, we still will often put GPS collars on them, depending on where we are, so that if they were to get lost, we could find them. Anything else you can think of?
While we're at these islands or someplace maybe that we don't know, there could be wild animals or stray dogs or something else.
Ooh, that's a good one.
We really haven't had much experience with that. A little bit. Both of our dogs have been attacked by dogs in Hawaii. So
Yeah,
before
before
we started
this.
sailing, and so we are pretty conscious of other dogs, especially off leash. If our dogs are off leash, that we're pretty aware and we pay pretty close attention because we don't want them to get hurt. But yeah, I mean, we just are aware and make sure that they aren't attacking some wildlife that they shouldn't. They aren't hunting when they shouldn't be hunting.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Both of
Right?
our dogs have strong hunting drives. They came pre-programmed with that. So we did a lot.
Default setting is hunting.
Yeah, so when they were young, we did a lot of let's not kill the wild animals training, and then they've been good ever since then. When it comes to things like stray dogs, we just don't take them into cities or towns that have lots of stray dogs. The strays typically congregate where the humans are because that's where the food is. For example, in Guatemala, in the towns, there were quite
There were a lot,
quite a lot of
stray
stray dogs.
Yeah.
And so we just kind of stayed away from those areas when we had our dogs. We kept our dogs in the more isolated spots, and then we never had any interactions with other local dogs with them so far in our travels by doing that.
Easy. Should we hit the big question that everybody wants to know? How do the dogs go to the bathroom?
The same as they always have, really.
Just like every other dog. Do you want to go show them how you go to the bathroom?
He just brought it up. He's gonna... We're a few hours early. Would you like to go now? Alright, we'll be right back. Go get your collar. Going back to 90% of the time we're walking the dogs just like normal people walk their dogs. Not going to go into it too much. It's kind of gross. When we're on a crossing, they go on the boat. And they just go up front. Easy.
They have tethers that they wear and harnesses. We clip them into the boat. They walk up. They go to the bathroom. We have a hose that we can rinse the boat off so it doesn't get gross.
Yeah. There's a
That's
cool
it.
maneuver that we can perform while sailing, and it's called heaving to.
Yeah.
And without going into it too much, we basically use the sails, we configure them with a backfill, and the rudder goes in a certain angle, and it causes the boat to come to a stop or a near stop. And so even while we're in the middle of the ocean, it makes it really safe and easy for the dogs to go up there.
Yeah, the boat goes from being, heeled over to pretty flat and usually pointed into the waves, so it's just kind of doing a gentle thing like this. And the dogs have pretty good sea legs, and they got four-wheel drive, and so they handle it pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the biggest concerns is like, well, what if they don't want to go to the bathroom because they're scared or it's hard? And the veterinarian pretty much assured us like the dog will go to the bathroom when they need to go. And that's been our experience. I'm not going to speak for all dogs, but our dogs have never held their bathroom needs.
Yeah, they might wait a little longer just to see, are we just doing a day sail and we'll get to the beach this evening? So they'll wait, but then if we don't, they're like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing. Got it.
When we are going to go on a passage, we'll actually sometimes not take them out the night before.
So then they go on the boat.
So they know,
oh, okay, this is what we're doing now.
Just to get back into the routine.
Oh, I was going to say, I think a lot of boat dog owners will have a grass mat that they'll use, that they'll set up on deck, or a space where the dogs. That might
It's pretty
work.
common.
Yeah, I think
we started out that way.
Yeah, and I was thinking that might work if you had a really small dog. If you had like a small a Yorkie or a Shih Tzu or something that could fit on that little pad, that might work.
Yeah,
but
I guess so. I never thought about that.
Yeah, it doesn't. For us, it never really worked. It didn't really make sense.
For us, maybe we didn't invest in a good enough grass mat. Because again, I know a lot of other sailors love that route. But when we had it, we found that when we would rinse it off and stuff, it kept shedding little pieces of plastic. And we didn't want little pieces of plastic going into the ocean. Like, that's the opposite of what we want. And we could also never really get the smell out. So, and
it always
stunk. Hauling it just wasn't a great option for us. It just works easier for us having them go on the deck, and they don't mind.
And then, otherwise they're on land.
Do you know what?
Nope.
Our dogs are so used to being beach dogs, being like Hawaiian born.
Maybe we should have got them sand.
Well,
instead of grass.
I wonder if the grass is really good for dogs who've always had like a yard.
We should have got them like a litter box, like a cat.
Even when we were staying with family in Arizona, it was gravel yards. Socialization. We are not the only people out here sailing with dogs. We are actually shocked at how many people sail with dogs. If you go to an anchorage where there are other people, there's almost always another boat with dogs, and they're going to want our dogs to play together. So our dogs actually have made tons of boat dog friends, and they get to play on the beach and reminisce about the last dolphins they saw and the fish they ate last week.
And if there isn't another dog, there's at least somebody who misses their dog or had a dog that passed away recently or not so recently that just loves dogs. And so our dogs, wherever they go, meet somebody that just loves them to death and has never met them, has never heard of them, has never anything. They just see our dogs and are like, oh my goodness, can I love on your dog? And of course they can. And then of course they get to meet all of our friends and family that come and visit.
Right,
So they actually get quite a bit of socialization. Okay, but last but not least, let's go over the one thing that I was concerned of because I did not grow up with dogs, is expenses. The first expense that I will mention is actually a time expense, because having the dogs takes a lot of time that I didn't ever have a dog growing up. I didn't grow up with dogs. My first dog was Dingo when I was an adult, and so I didn't realize how much time actually having a dog was. I know there's always the jokes of, you can keep the puppy, but you have to go pick up the poop, and you have to water it, and you have to feed it, and whatever. And that was always like, I knew that logically, but in real life, to take the dogs, for us especially, to go to the bathroom when we're anchored somewhere, to take them to potty, it means loading up the dinghy, going to the beach, letting them run on the beach, picking up their poop, loading back up in the dinghy, rinsing them off, getting back on the boat, drying them off, or whatever, right? So it's a multi-step process. This is when we're on the islands, of course. But it's a process that is a lot of time, multiple times a day. It's expensive.
Gets us to the beach.
Which is great.
And then we have to spend a lot of time there at the beach. So, like, woe is us.
Oh, wait.
There isn't an extreme added expense of actually having them. Because we are traveling by boat and not by airplane, we're not having to pay airfare tickets. The only thing that we're paying for is the government paperwork. We have to go to the veterinarians and get paperwork and like health certificates to travel from country to country, and that does cost money. However, now that we're out of the United States, the vet bills are actually pretty low.
And we have international health insurance for the dogs.
Well, I mean, that's pretty expensive.
It is, but it's nice that it exists.
Yeah,
like, I didn't know that. You found that. I didn't know it even existed to be able to have dog health insurance internationally.
Yeah, so our health checkups and things, at least a portion of it is always covered by their health insurance. That takes off a cost right there.
And that's the biggest expense. Now, some countries, I will say, legitimately said, I don't care that you have dogs. So we went and did all the paperwork and did all the forms and handed it to them when we checked in with the boat, and the person legitimately said, I don't care.
So far, most of the money we've spent for this paperwork has been in vain.
But better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Some countries could say your dog isn't allowed in. They could take your dog.
Oh yeah, we're not messing around.
Yeah, and
we dot our T's and cross our I's when it comes to this sort of things. Yeah.
So on top of those things, the other expenses are just kind of normal things.
Like dog expenses.
Yeah, food. There's a little more wear and tear on the boat, I would say, so that is a expense, right? The dog's running around, jumping off the furniture, nails on the wood flooring, stuff like that, but pretty minimal. Oh, our vacuum, I think, definitely gets a lot more of a workout, so that'll probably die sooner.
Definitely does.
A lot of hair and pumps and vacuums and things.
Before we close, we wanted to give a little bit of a life update. We haven't shown you guys what's been going on lately, and that is mostly because there hasn't been a lot going on. So we vlogged, we showed you guys when Brett was sick. I did, in fact, get it. It took me a while. I didn't get sick right away, but then when I did get sick, I got sick and I stayed sick for like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I could not kick it, and it wasn't particularly bad, but I just have like the energy for
anything.
It's frustrating because I feel like I've gotten so much of my health back, and then I get sick and it knocks me down. I'm like, what?
How many days did you go without a voice?
Oh,
she was hoarse, just no. Silent.
I completely lost my voice. Like, it wasn't even like I was croaky. It was gone. I had no sound. You could have kidnapped me and I wouldn't have even been able to scream. I would have just been like, nothing. It was That's never happened to me before in my life. So there was very little that I could do to, tell you about what was going on.
But beyond that, we have been working on the arch. We've made some big progress on that. We've started working on the Dodger arch, and we've picked out paint and solar panels and kind of some
lots of adventures.
Lots of things going on.
Working on our Spanish.
Most of the past several weeks has been sickness. Sorry,
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Okay.
I'm really curious if anybody else has gotten sick. It felt a lot like COVID, but all of our COVID tests came back negative, and so did all of our flu tests. But it felt like COVID. Has anybody... And then we lost our voices. And I lost it for a long time, my voice. But you lost your voice for a while.
Yeah.
So has anybody else gotten sick with something like that recently? Like, I'm really curious if anybody knows what it was.
But anyways, yeah, that's our life update.
Yeah. So many exciting things. But
we have some t-shirts coming out soon.
Yes, I have been, while I was sick in bed, I have been using the tablet that Brett got me for Christmas, and I've been hand drawing and like creating t-shirt designs. I've been having a lot of fun with it. And so right now we are in the sampling process. We're trying to find a printing service that can give us actually like quality shirts, because we don't want it to just be...
Yeah, we really liked this company that did these,
yeah.
But they were a little harder. Yeah, they were a little hard to get.
If you have anybody that you recommend, let us know. I would love feedback on sizing. Ooh. I want to make sure that we have an inclusive enough sizing range for our t-shirt lines that I want to start doing. Because I think last time it went up to 3XL, but I don't think that was a large enough range. So if you're interested in any of the t-shirts we might come up with, like we've got a whole collection of t-shirt designs that we've been like saying over the years, like, oh, we'll make that into a t-shirt. Anyway, if you think you might ever be interested in it, let us know like what size you are, if you are somebody that might not always be able to get sizing in your size, because I want to make sure that everybody is good.
Thank you for sticking around. Thanks for hanging out with us talking about the dogs. We know that you probably have questions, things we didn't hit on. Leave a comment. Hopefully at some point we'll be able to answer it. Thanks for watching. Bye.